Wilbur, go, go, go!
Now, was that not just the coolest thing you've ever seen? I can't stop watching that. I'm so happy with how that turned out. But anyway, hi, I'm Squilly, and today I'm going to show off this trap that I made, these two traps that I made for the code monster of the QSMP. So these are the two traps that I made. One is for a survival mode player, and the other is for a creative mode player. But before we get here, I need to explain the main mechanic that allows both of these traps to work. And that is the elevator mod. So if you've been watching the QSMP, you would probably recognize these. These are elevators, and you can just go up and down them by jumping or shifting if there are multiple in a vertical row. And the thing that makes these elevators so good for these traps is a specific mechanic that I don't think actually has been discovered on the server yet. It's pretty much what happens when you place a block in the two spaces above the elevator. This disables the elevator because it's being interfered with by the block above it. And so what happens is that instead of going to the orange elevator here, I go straight up to the yellow one. I skip the orange one because it's been completely disabled due to a block being there. Now, since I removed it, I can access the orange one. But this interception and skipping mechanic is really useful because for the survival trap over here, I can make it so that the first player that goes through this elevator will skip the trap layer and go to a safe area on the bottom and instantly block off the safe area once they get there and open up the trap area for a second player to actually go into the trap. So the basic idea behind both of my traps is that an egg would be used to lure the entity down one of these elevators. And because the entity is pretty much invincible, there's not really any reason why it wouldn't follow the egg down. Because if there was any danger there, it wouldn't really matter, and the entity would expect to arrive at the same place that the egg would arrive, which is not true. And so this is what this would look like. I have a command block down here that will send me back up to the top, So I'm gonna skip the orange layer and go directly to the yellow layer and get teleported back up. So that was the yellow layer. Now the orange layer is activated, and now I'm here, and I can't go down any further because this trapdoor is actually blocking off this elevator. Believe it or not, even though I can fit under there, it blocks it off for some reason. And something that's really nice about this setup I have here is that it has no downtime at all. Meaning, let's say in the situation of the cinematic that you just saw, if the egg went down and then the entity went down almost immediately after, it wouldn't matter because the system is instant. It's fast enough that it doesn't matter how little time there is between them going down. It'll work either time, and I'm going to prove that by spamming my shift key and showing you. There you go. The non-existent downtime is because of this tripwire hook. Tripwire hooks are actually instant detection. And so I can just walk in and it instantly gives off a signal when I walk in there. This is actually incredibly useful because tripwire is one of the blocks that do not disable elevators when they are on top of them. And so this lets me detect when someone has used an elevator or has arrived at an elevator. And I can use stuff like this zero tick generator here. It just does that. This just instantly disables the elevator for the safe layer. And this other side of the tripwire pushes this block over here and instantly enables this elevator to be used, and it's going to be the trap layer here. And here I can kind of show off what it looks like in from a different perspective here. If I just toss an item onto the tripwire, that's how fast that is. So this is why in the cinematic you see Dapper arriving at a completely different area than the code monster arrives at. And so now with that information, I can explain this trap. Ignore that stasis chamber I had there. I just realized I didn't need it this entire time. Anyway, when the first person goes down this elevator, they will go to the bottom, which is the safe area, and will activate a very similar thing here to block off the elevator on the bottom. And this wire over here will open up the elevator here, which is disguised as a cactus. You can see it says white elevator. And you can disguise these elevators as different things just by right-clicking them with certain blocks. And cacti are one of those things that you can do, and it actually still has the function of a cactus. So now that it's been opened up, when the second player goes down the elevator, they'll arrive on top of the cactus here, inside of all these boats. There are 24 boats here, and that's going to entity cram them to death. And this tripwire is going to instantly push this reinforced glass into their head. So they are not really going to be able to move at all because of the force of the boats pushing them. And these walls on the sides are going to keep them in. And their sight line is going to stay inside that reinforced glass, so they can't hit anything. So I'm going to have 1,000 health that I've given myself. And I'm just going to go down here. Another benefit of the elevator that I didn't mention is that it centers the player perfectly, which is really nice because it removes the possible randomness of the player's position when they go down the elevator, which makes getting them into a trap a lot more consistent. Okay, so I'm just going to go down and... Whoa. Wait, why am I... Oh, wait, I remember what I did wrong. I'm supposed to have a wall under that. There you go. That keeps the boats there. They were super far over here because they got pulled by the piston and the block. That's what happened. Okay, so I'm just going to go in this trap, and it's just going to Boop. Oh man. So I'm not able to mine the glass. I'm not able to mine anything around me. I can throw some bombs, but it's not going to do anything. Boop. 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 And it's because I am like throwing it as a player is a cooldown like Ender Pearls, and so I can't damage the boats enough to break them. Which is funny. Bows don't work. You just like immediately pick up the arrow. You don't actually hit the boats. You can't pearl out. You can't chorus fruit out. Those are both because of the rift stabilizer. And you're getting damaged too fast to actually use a warp scroll or a warp stone. And that's what the cactus is mainly for. The damage from the boats, the entity cramming damage, is a little bit inconsistent, and sometimes there's a chance that you could have a gap from getting damaged long enough to be able to use the warp scroll, but you can't with this, with the cactus damage here. And I also tried with lagging my world a bunch. Oop, there we go. So I tried lagging my world a bunch too, just to see if the pullback on this was like client side or not, and it's not. It actually, if the world is lagging and you're in that, you aren't going to be able to pull it back all the way and be able to use it, even if like in real time you're holding it for a super long time and it seems like you have a gap in time long enough to do it, it won't work. Now for getting the boats in there, you obviously aren't going to be able to just like place them in there. You're going to want to replace the elevator with like a waterlogged block or something like this, so that you can use a dispenser with 24 boats in a little storage system like that, and just flick the lever here until the dispenser runs out. And there you go. Once you hear that, it's out. And so after this, you just want to replace the dispenser with a wall, and also you'd want to put a reinforced sticky piston here and push it forward, then put a wall down here and backwards so that it stops like clipping into this. And also these boats are being supported only by these two blocks here. If you were to remove those blocks, it just destroys the boats. And so you just want to make sure you have blocks supporting those. Something you should avoid doing is putting full blocks around the cactus elevator here, because cacti are slightly shorter than full blocks, and the entire purpose of the cactus is to prevent the player from being able to use any teleportation devices. So if you have a full block on the side here that the player could stand on, they would be standing off of the cactus and would not be getting the rapid damage from it. So because the damage is less frequent, there's a very small chance that they could actually use one of these teleportation devices to get to a warp stone. Having full blocks over here to support the boats is fine, because the player is getting blocked by this full block here, and so they're not going to be able to stand on these blocks. If you thought that was cool, just get ready for the crazy stuff that's happening in this one. So the inspiration behind this trap is a certain trap that used to actually be possible to make in Minecraft, and I think it might still be able to be it might still be possible, but I don't know how to make it currently. There used to be a way to generate this thing called block 36, and I'm gonna put this here now. It's the moving piston block, and I'm right clicking right now and I can't place blocks here, and I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna place sand up here, and I'm going to have it fall into place. And you're going to see that it's actually still a falling block entity. And I can't break it, and I can't hit the block on the other side from it. And there used to be a trap that you could make with this setup so that a player could respawn in a little box with their head in this block, and they wouldn't be able to break anything, even in creative mode like I am now. But I don't know how to make a block 36 in 1.18.2, and I actually found a better method that actually allows for more customizability, and that is with the sentry from SecurityCraft. It has the same properties of the falling block, where you can't, even in creative mode, you can't hit the blocks outside because your sight line is being blocked by it. And the only way you can destroy it in creative mode is if you shift right click it. However, there's actually a way to prevent a player in creative mode from being able to destroy this thing with shift right clicking. So let me just show you. When you're in a door and you if you're inside of a block at all, if your player is intercepting inside the hitbox and you try to press shift, you can't press shift, or you can't physically sneak. But I can still hold shift and use this ender pearl, because the game knows that there's an exception for, even though I'm looking at the door here and I'm holding shift, but even though I'm not physically looking like I'm crouching, it still lets me use it. But the weird thing with the sentry is that doesn't work. That exception is not made. Even though I'm pressing shift right now and I'm right clicking, it doesn't actually work. I'm shift right clicking right now, and when I step out, I can do it. And so this trap has your feet inside of this wall here, and also kind of the bottom of this cauldron, and it prevents you from being able to shift right click this sentry. And that's also why the trap is bottom to the top. Whenever you go down an elevator, you hold shift, and if you were to go into this trap from the top, you would actually be stuck in shift mode, and you would be able to break the sentry. So I'm in this door right now and I'm not holding shift, but the door went into me while I was holding shift, and now I can't unshift physically. But there we go. And once I'm out, I actually can stand up. It's this weird thing that happens when your player gets clipped inside a block. You just can't change the crouch mode you're on. The trap here is really complex because we have an elevator that it's disguised as a wall, and so the player will actually get teleported to this block plus a half block. And this is to put their head in the inventory scanner up here. The reason I have it like this is because the inventory scanner field actually disables the elevator block. And so because of the elevation the player gets from this wall, their head is going to be sticking into the inventory scanner field here, while I can keep these two blocks above the elevator as blocks that don't disable it. So the current configuration is blocking the trap area and has the safe area open. You might be wondering what the cake is for. It's actually one of the only blocks that I can use here, and I'll explain why. I need to be able to toggle the availability of the elevator, but for here I have the tripwire in this block. I only have this block down here to work with. Also, additionally, the sentry requires a block being underneath it to support it. So I need a very specific block that supports the sentry and also blocks the elevator from being used, and can can be broken from a piston pushing a block into it and doesn't drop an item. And the cake works perfectly for that. Now carpets actually don't block the elevator, and so that's why I'm replacing the cake with a carpet. And I'm also zero ticking it under the sentry so the sentry doesn't break. I need it to not drop a block. Like, for example, I could use a pumpkin here, but when I push the carpet into the pumpkin, it would actually drop a block, and there would be a small chance that the pumpkin item would touch the tripwire here and activate the trap before a player actually goes into it. And so that's why the cake is actually perfect for this. So whenever the first player goes up here, they'll activate the safe area and initialize the trap down here. So now the carpet is above the elevator here and the trap is enabled. Now whenever the next player goes up the elevator, they'll arrive here and activate this tripwire, and I have that zero tick generator, but it's two of them kind of merged together to push this reinforced cobblestone wall and this cauldron directly into them, which will keep them in place and also prevent them from being able to shift right click the sentry here. Okay, so there we go. We're in now. I'm moving around right now and I can't move much. And that's because we're in the cauldron, but also, as you can see here, I'm trying to move around, but I'm somehow being limited more than the cauldron is supposedly supposed to be limiting me. I don't know why this happens, but it's pretty cool. And like a really good benefit to this is that if you can see in my F3 screen that my sight line is constantly on the inventory scanner field, which is this red thing that the inventory scanner projects. This is actually a good thing because believe it or not, there's actually a very small chance that if I was just inside the sentry alone, there's a small chance that on a server I would be able to somehow look in a specific direction and there would be a glitch where my sight line would actually be able to see one of the blocks here and I'd be able to break them. And I discovered this because I collaborated with my friend B for this cinematic, and when I showed her this trap that I had before, which didn't have the cauldron in it, I told her to try to break out. I just told her to try her best to break out, and then she broke one of these glass blocks, and I was like dumbfounded. And I did some testing with an alt account in like a multiplayer world, and I realized that somehow, and it's very inconsistent, but it's possible to do that. But because of the cauldron keeping your sight line inside the inventory scanner field, it doesn't even matter if you can somehow have your sight line select the block here and break it, because the inventory scanner field actually can't be broken. It just immediately regenerates, which is really nice. But also, any block that's inside of a sentry can't be broken, even by a creative mode player. And so there's like double immunity for that block that your sight line is constantly being kept inside. In addition to the sentry already making it impossible for you to hit anything, at least mostly impossible, there's almost 2 other layers of unbreakability keeping you inside this thing, which is crazy. So as a player in survival mode, you would potentially you would go into the bleeding mode where you're like crawling and you have a minute to get revived. And when that happens, you forcefully get put into crawl mode, which you would not be able to do like without this like revival mod. And it puts you underneath the cauldron, and your hitbox is actually getting blocked off by the stubs on the sides here. And so you actually can't crawl out when this happens. And if you were to get revived, you would just go right back into the trap, and you also can't jump for some reason. The inventory scanner, I haven't even showed off that much. So the inventory scanner, it requires a storage module in order to revoke items directly from a player's inventory. So in the item filter, I have all of these warp items filtered, and that's because in the survival mode trap, you have that cactus giving the player a bunch of damage that prevents them from being able to use these teleportation items. But when it comes to a player in creative mode, you can't damage them to prevent them from using them. And so I have this item scanner that just removes the items from their inventory directly. I have a warp scroll right here, and I also have some bombs left over. I'm just going to get them immediately taken from me. And now they're in the storage of this thing. But you might be thinking, oh, what if it fills up? What's going to happen? Is it going to stop taking it? No, it's actually just going to, like, delete the items at that point. It's still going to revoke them from your inventory, which is incredibly awesome. This is the most overpowered thing of the entire trap, I think. A really cool thing about the inventory scanner, and I'm actually going to go into survival mode for this. Oh my god, never mind, I'm not. I think we're good. There's actually functionality with this inventory scanner block and the just enough items mod. So let's say, for example, you want to filter an item that you don't have on you. You can actually look it up and drag and drop it into the filter here. And because you have a storage module, let's say you trap something like the binary entity, which has an elytra that no one else has, and you set that filter, it will actually steal the elytra from it. And you can actually get that item, which is incredible. That would be so fun. Oh my god. That would be so funny if someone actually did that. And inventory scanners, the crafting recipe for them requires an ender chest, which I know has been banned from the QSMP, but it's only been banned to the extent that it can't be placed down and they can't be used if they've already been placed down. You can still have the item in your inventory, meaning you could still craft the inventory scanners. Oh yeah, and rift stabilizers are kind of expensive, but I know chorus fruit exists somewhere on the server, and I know people have gotten Eyes of Ender before, and so I'm pretty sure it's possible to make this, and it's very worth it to make that. So after the player has been trapped, I would recommend removing these reinforced sticky pistons that you have, just to make sure that no one could potentially break the person out. That's the other thing, is the player is actually standing on top of this wall down here, which is not able to be reinforced because it's an elevator, and the elevator blocks can't be moved by a piston. And so you have to make this little contraption that I'm about to show you that will pretty much instantly replace the block whenever you break the block here. So you need to put obsidian on the bottom of this before you put a redstone block here. And so here, this is the disguised elevator here that can't be moved. And this is the cobblestone wall that you're going to put there, and you're going to reinforce it whenever it gets up there. And this should just it should just push this wall up whenever this gets broken. And this armor stand is going to simulate a player being in there, and it's just going to show it. It's probably going to drop a little, but it's going to get pushed back up by this other wall. There you go. And so now you can reinforce that block, and no one else can break it. There is actually a way to evade these traps. There's a specific way to evade this trap and this trap, but they both require knowledge of how the traps actually work to realistically, intentionally evade them. So for the survival mode trap, The way to evade it is to simply go down the elevator and up the elevator really quickly. Just like that. And you're actually, you have activated the trap, but also are not in it anymore. You got to the elevator and out so fast that the tripwire couldn't actually place the block in your head before you got out. For the creative mode trap, that doesn't actually work. You can try to go up and down really quickly, but you can't. I think going down elevators take a bit longer for some reason. So that doesn't work for this trap, but something else does. So this trap does not let you shift right click the sentry that's in it. And that's also why the trap is bottom to top, because if you were to go from the top to the bottom, you would be shifting and you would be able to shift right click the sentry. But even with an elevator on the bottom going up, you could hold shift and walk on top of the elevator, or even if there's no elevator under the entry elevator, you could just hold shift on top of the elevator and then jump up into it, and you're already shifting, and you can just right click and kill the sentry, which also kills the cauldron, which makes your escape incredibly easy. But like I said before, that is very unlikely to happen. It would be impossible to do that like intentionally without knowing how the trap works ahead of time. And another thing you can do is actually, oh my god, you can actually make the cauldron a lava cauldron in the case that you're trying to trap like a survival mode player and you want to damage them while they're in the trap. Or you can also, you know, you can do that if you want to see the creative mode player just burning constantly. That's kind of funny. I think that's pretty much everything. Help! Somebody get me out of here! Someone! The only way you can get me out of here is if you click the subscribe. The only way you can. Oh, ow. Oh my god. Oh, ow. Oh, what's happening to my vision? Oh my god.